Have you noticed how every few months, one of these giant social media platforms decides to change the rules for using its app, and billions of people just kind of have to accept it? Well, Instagram just did it again. Recently, Meta announced changes related to its end-to-end message encryption on Instagram, essentially allowing them to read any user's private messages. And whether you follow this stuff closely or not, I think this story reveals something much bigger about the internet today. Because the real issue here isn't just encryption, it's dependency. Think about it for a second. Around 3 billion people use Instagram every month. 3 billion. That's almost half the planet relying on one company's infrastructure to communicate, share memories, run businesses, and stay connected with other people. And when you depend on a centralized platform that heavily, you don't really control the experience anymore. The company does. They can change the rules, change the algorithms, change the privacy model, and change how your data is handled. And your only real other option is either to accept it or leave. That's the trade-off most people made without even realizing it. Convenience in exchange for control. Here's the article I read that was published by the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Broken Promises. RIP to Instagram's end-to-end encrypted DMs. And if we scroll down and read, we see that last week, Instagram ended its opt-in and therefore rarely used end-to-end encryption feature. Years after publicly promising to provide the privacy protections of end-to-end encryption across its platforms by default, it instead gave up on that technical challenge. We've now lost an option for safer conversations on one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. And then if we scroll down some more, we could see here that their claim for doing so is that very few people were opting in to end-to-end encrypted messaging in DMs, when in reality, it turned out it was an optional 4-step process. Talk about not making things easy to do so, right? And it's probably true that most people don't really care. Social media is fun. It feels open. It feels exciting. But now I think more and more people are starting to realize how fragile this setup actually is. Because every time one of these companies changes something major, billions of users are reminded that they don't own the infrastructure they depend on. And encryption is one of the clearest examples of that. A lot of people hear the term end-to-end encryption and immediately tune out because it sounds technical, but the idea is actually really simple. It means your messages are scrambled in a way that ideally only you and the person you're talking to can read them. So when a company changes how that system works, people get uncomfortable because private communication is one of the last things users still expect online. By the way, if you enjoy these kind of videos about privacy, technology, Web3, and the future of the internet, make sure to subscribe because I've got a lot more coming your way. Now here's the deeper problem nobody really talks about. Even when centralized platforms offer privacy features, you're still trusting the platform itself. You're trusting the company to implement everything correctly, maintain it correctly, secure it correctly, and not completely change direction later on. That's the fundamental weakness of centralized infrastructure. The users don't control the system. The company does. And once you start seeing the internet through that lens, you realize this issue goes way beyond Instagram. Your photos, messages, followers, and communities, and even your online identity mostly exist on systems owned by corporations. These are systems you participate in but don't actually control. And I think that's why so many people are becoming interested in decentralized technologies and peer-to-peer systems lately. The reality is that a handful of companies now sit in the middle of most online interactions. Communication, publishing, entertainment, discovery, social interaction, it all flows through the same centralized platforms. Hence why there's been a movement towards the read, write, and own aspect of Web3, which puts the control back in the user's hands in regards to how they want to share their data on the internet. Many projects are already paving the way to such a reality, such as Qortal with its own peer-to-peer blockchain platform, and Bitcoin for monetary transactions. The most important thing as a user, though, is to realize you have options and aren't tied down into privacy agreements you don't necessarily agree with when using the web. The most recent example being this Instagram story. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment and like and subscribe. It helps me a ton. I'll see you in the next one.